Thank you and welcome everyone. Grateful that everyone has been able to join us today. I'm glad that I'm joined by my colleague Ken Thompson. We've got a really exciting discussion that we want to have today. I'm going to sort of set the conditions and then we'll do a little bit more housekeeping. I know that people are still getting dialed in, so a few of you are just kind of hearing things. I wanted to tell a story because a few minutes ago I just got off a call with a senior leadership team of a big organization, and they're in the midst of undertaking a pretty big organizational transformation, and we're doing a lot of organization design work with them right now. And as we were going through the conversation and we were ticking off a variety of different issues that we needed to get answers to and get direction around, the CEO kind of sat back and he said, you know what, I don't want people to lose track of what we're really trying to accomplish here. We are trying to really change and transform our business for the better. And he kind of went on to a short monologue about, what he's really hoping to accomplish and how this organization change that they're undertaking is going to drive better results for the business, make things better for the people that work there, and provide a lot better clarity and accountability for how they get things done. And as I listened to that, I thought to myself, we are absolutely hitting the right topic today, because often we think of organization design as an effort to just move things around in the organization or cut costs or whatever. And sometimes those are indeed what happens. But often organization design is actually a fundamental and exciting source of hope. And so at any rate, we're excited for today's conversation because the environment that we're in right now would suggest that there's a lot of change going on, that businesses are being forced to rethink how they do things. And sometimes when we feel like our backs are against the wall, we kind of lose a little bit of the optimism, a little bit of the fun, a little bit of the hope that comes with this. And so we want to kind of talk about how to rekindle that, channel it, and make it a positive experience as you're undertaking these kinds of efforts. Now, for those that aren't familiar with AlignOrg Solutions, we are a specialized consulting firm that really helps organizations clarify how they're going to win in the marketplace, and then assess essentially how their organization is set up to be effective. We help business leaders redesign their organization and then undertake the change and transformation journey that will allow them to realize those outcomes. When we do our work, most of our work is literally down in the trenches, helping executives and leaders figure out how to transform their organization. But we also do a lot of capability building, helping professionals learn some of the tools and methods that we follow. And it's one of the reasons that we do this webinar series every quarter or so that folks can listen in, gain new insights and ideas for how they want to undertake organization transformation efforts in their organization. Now, you might think, well, if that's the normal way you're doing your work, what's happening now that we're kind of working through this COVID-19 situation where a lot of people are still working from home or workforces are not traveling, things like that. And the reality is Ken and I and our team have been able to do a lot of work now virtually, whether that's on the project side of our work or on the capability building side of our work. And so one of the things that we are excited to kind of convey to organizations is you can do great organization design work. And Ken's going to talk about this a little bit later in our discussion today, even in a virtual environment. Now, today, as we go through our discussion, much like I kind of kicked off with a story, Ken and I are going to tell stories. And the reason we want to tell those stories is because we think that's a great way to convey how organization design principles, learnings, and frameworks can apply. And as we do this, we recognize that we'll be telling stories from things that we read in the media. We'll sometimes tell stories from colleagues that we've bumped into with at conferences. Sometimes we'll tell stories from those we've actually done projects with. But the point is, there's lots of stories out there, and those stories have universal appeal and application. So without further ado, Ken and I want to kind of outline our objectives for today. There's sort of four things we want to be able to get through. One is, how do we use an organization design initiative to be a catalyst to drive optimism in an organization? And candidly, in today's environment where the economy in some sectors is really suffering, with the pandemic sweeping different parts of the world at different rates, we need a degree of hope and optimism. And we want to talk about that and how times of change can actually be a source of that. Secondly, we want to talk about how leaders and executives can really sort of kindle energy and focus in their organization to spur renewal, turnaround, and strategic differentiation. We want to talk about the employee experience a little bit and how that can be changed for the positive. And then finally, we want to talk about how we do things maybe now in the short term, in some cases to survive, but then we turn our attention to the long term and say, how do we really set ourselves up for long-term success? Now, as we indicated, one of our colleagues does a lot of work in the area of optimism, and she is quoted as saying the following: optimism is a way of thinking. It's an attitude. Our thoughts influence our emotions, which impact our behaviors. Increase in optimism by changing our thoughts, but it's not so easy. We all have some habits of negative or realistic thinking. Some are so automatic we aren't even aware of them. Ken and I often say when we're working with clients that an organization's design is a reflection of the collective logic of how people think. Because the reason that we're structured a certain way, or the reason that we do a work process a certain way, is because that's how we think it should be done, and we think that's what's good. When we hit a time when the economy's tough, or when the pandemic is sweeping the world, we start to question, are those choices still good? And so this becomes a great opportunity for us to sort of look with a new and bright set of glasses at some of the choices we've made, and hopefully instill some new ways of thinking that can impact not only our thoughts, our feelings and emotions, but ultimately our behaviors. And our behaviors are what drive performance. Before I hand it to Ken, I want to make sure that as we go through today's discussion, that anyone feels open to providing questions. Please use the question box, as Vani indicated at the beginning. We love to engage in a dialogue virtually, even though we can't speak openly. And we find that that's a great way to tailor some of the comments we have to what's on your mind. So with that, Ken, take it away.
Thank you, Reed. I appreciate that. And so now it's time we'll roll up our sleeves just a little bit and talk about some of the considerations that should be addressed as we look at strategic organization design. Reed was just talking a little bit about choices. He and I get phone calls a lot from large companies who are currently facing challenges around the pandemic. And many times they're not exactly sure what to attack first. They feel that the environment has changed so much. There's so many unknowns out there. How do we manage this new environment? And so here are a few strategic questions that we often share with leaders just to kind of get the conversation going. First was, what do we want to be after the crisis is past? Is sometimes we see leaders get so focused on the day-to-day operations that they lose sight of how they want to continue to build strategic value or differentiation in the marketplace. And so it's really important to always have that forward-thinking goal. We have an article that will be coming out this week about strategic mindedness. It's a mentality, it's a paradigm of not losing sight or getting distracted in the day-to-day running the business side of stuff. The other piece that we mention a lot is continued thought about differentiation. What makes you different from your competitors, and what can you capitalize on to help you remain differentiated in the marketplace? Because ultimately, this is one of the strongest contributing factors to market share. And so with that, there's a lot of choices that happen that need to be made to ensure the organization has success. And these are organization design choices. So if you look at our model here, we often use a Rubik's Cube to symbolize the complexities of an organization. Much like a Rubik's Cube is complex to solve and has 6 sides, we also feel that an organization has some similar characteristics. There are multiple sides or aspects of an organization. It's complex. When a leader attempts to solve a particular problem in the organization, much like trying to solve a side of a Rubik's Cube, it has an impact that can be felt across the other sides. And so when we do this, we look at strategy. When we share this model, strategy should be a touch point on all sides of the organization. All choices should reflect back to the strategic initiatives of the organization. And then once the strategic initiatives are clearly defined, we then look at these other sides and bring them into alignment virtually simultaneously to ensure that the organization can be effective and efficient in executing its strategic initiatives. These sides are work and structure, information, people rewards, continuous improvement, the leadership and culture, and so forth. Um, so these are things that we want to tie back to the strategy of the organization. Next slide, Reed. And so how do we do this? Well, first of all, we take a look at the environment. What are the environmental factors that we need to deal with? What is our talent pool? What is our budget, our resources? How does the pandemic play into this? What is our competition doing, and so forth? From that, we then derive a strategy, and we have many tools and processes to help leaders do this. But understanding what the strategy is, it is not a fluffy statement. It's not ambiguous. The strategy needs to be defined in a way that is actionable and clearly understood by all the leaders in the organization so that they can make the proper choices around that. From the strategy, we then look at what capabilities are needed to execute the strategy of the organization. The capabilities, usually can be dozens and dozens of capabilities in an organization, but even then, which of those are the most critical? Which are the ones that are directly tied to executing the strategy versus which capabilities are needed just to run the business and so forth. Followed by that, we then look at the choices. These are trade-off choices. This is who's going to do the work, how is the work going to be done, how are we going to organize ourselves, and so forth. And this is where the cube model comes back into play for both capability execution as well as choice discussions. Is we need to look at all 6 sides of the organization to ensure we have alignment as we make trade-off choices, as we determine what capabilities need to be developed, need to be improved, and need to be managed. And ultimately, how we do these things will deliver the results of the organization. And so whenever we see a leader that expresses frustration with the results that his or her organization is getting, many times it will come back to organizational choices and capability misalignments that exist within the organization.